Why do some readily identify the insidious effects of indoctrinating children into theology, but think the state schooling is innocuous? This thought is related to another shorty I had, where I was talking about how the religious right, the political religious right in the United States of America, really is very adamant and very at the forefront of fighting against the indoctrination that's going on in public school system from the political left, because a lot of people in the political left, and not just public schooling system, the mandatory K through 12, which is kindergarten through 12th grade, which is different in other countries. They have preschool and they have standards and things like that, forms when you get to college, but it goes all the way into college. And you have a lot of left leaning people who have entered the schooling system in the United States of America and inject their politics, their political views into the actual syllabus and into the actual teaching process, where it is not so much an education process anymore and more of a schooling process where you're programming the kids towards a certain way of thinking about the world. And not even just that, even if it's this background, you're in a system that is tax funded and you're being told, and even in general, it is mostly positive compared to a lot of what goes on. You don't really have anything else to compare it to, and just in general, because human beings are human beings, even if human beings are not necessarily doing the best thing they can do for you in that thing that's necessary, in general, they'll be 50% plus one at least positive. Once you get to 50% plus one to the negative, then you start getting into situations where that thing gets kicked off. But why does the trope of homeschoolers being these Bible thumping people carry on? Where it's like, oh, they just want to take kids out and just teach them about God and this and that. And I don't know. I would homeschool. I would prefer to homeschool if I had the choice, if I had a kid. And I am as a religious as it comes. I do know a predominant amount of them actually have this, and there's a lot of people who wish there was more Jesus in school. Oh, the reason kids are failing because we need more Jesus in school. Like, nah, I don't think you would prefer the sort of Jesus I think we need more in school. We need more comparative religions. I think that would be an appropriate part to learn in any actual education system. Understand that these are the different religions that other people in the world have come up with and how to look at the world. But don't teach it as fact. So I think the thing comes from just in general, if you see somebody who is a true believer in a certain religion, and then in general their child or somebody else who is a believer comes up and says, I don't believe anymore, they would think this is a heathen. This is somebody going away from the right way. So even if they're not being completely taught and educated in something else that you're against, just them leaving the faith is negative to that person. So I think that's what it is more for this whole innocuous schooling thing, because it's actually positive to some people. There is some things in there where some people think, oh, those people's parents are not smart enough to actually educate them, so we have to bring them to school. But most of the objections you hear seem to include something, how is your kid going to socialize? Socialize, socialism, collectivism, communism, that sort of mentality is in there. How will she become an actual useful member of society? They want you to be part of this collective, part of this society. Yet you can still do this. It's not about just getting the actual information on how to earn a living. Because most people understand there's better ways. I don't know if most people understand, but there are better ways to actually convey that information to learn something to do that can actually be effective. Like getting it directly from the people who are going to hire you, for example. So I think there is that aspect of them wanting some control and having more believers in the faith, because right now you see some movements talking about, okay, homeschooling is okay, remote learning is okay, but we still have to have control. We still have to be deciding what the actual kids are learning and what they're being taught and who's actually teaching them and things like that. Okay, so even if I do think and I do agree that there are better systems out there possibly to educate children, and I think a lot of those are starting to come to actually have a chance to actually exist now that we've had this pause and reset of general society where people are rethinking why we're doing things in certain ways. And that's one of the amazing things that's going to come out of this unfortunate situation with the pandemic. But then now I'm saying unfortunate, but if the positives come out, this is something that we'll tell 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And some of these changes might have been able to happen regardless without the pandemic. But I think some of these systems, especially when it comes to the schooling systems, were so embedded into society. So many people had been through them and indoctrinated towards thinking about them as innocuous, thinking like, we are not that programmed for it, we are not that biased towards it. But so many people out there just could not even imagine, envision trying homeschooling, envision a different way of actually educating children. They just thought this is the way. Other countries out there have been going in and trying to copy the American system in different ways. This things where like, why did we have such a long summer break in the United States of America? That was because kids used to need to go home to actually harvest crops. Do we understand the Prussian system, actual origin of these things, and the kind of educating it does? Even when you're talking about actual education, what is it preparing the students for? It's preparing them for a certain form of work. Now, is that work the same anymore? Is that post schooling environment still the same? Or can we get a situation where now businesses can be more independent and find better ways to recruit and train people that will come into those places? You get your people who are, these are my core people, I'm getting them, maybe even if it's just going back to the whole apprenticeship where you're passing these things down in a family and things like that. And then you have gig people working who you're like, this guy is a driver, but instead of being a driver for one company, he's a driver for 5 or 6 companies in this region, and he moves around, and he moves somewhere else. So there's other ways of doing things. But I think we are in general aware of how most people who are Christians take their children to Christian education as children, to the churches and the Sunday groups and things like that. They teach them that thing at home, and it indoctrinates them into that faith system. It's not like this is a Christian child. This is a child of Christian parents, and then they turn out to be Christian most times because of that indoctrination. Same thing that happens in school. The schooling system indoctrinates you to whatever state that you're in, to whatever system that you're in. The teachers pass on their political aspects, their political points of views onto you and influence you, and that's what happens. So I think both of these are not innocuous, both are indoctrination, whether you're taking your kid to Sunday school or to madrasa or to all those kind of things. They're being indoctrinated into that. Same thing in the schools, and I think this is something that we should just pay more attention to and see what is insidious, what is innocuous, and what can be carried on, what is positive. I think in general, just letting the child have the faculties, educating them with the faculties of critical thinking and how to absorb new information and have the formulas and have the process to actually take that in, ask the questions, get the answers, and then as they get older, they can decide what is the more appropriate system for them, what has actually achieved that burden of evidence, that burden of proof that they find to be worthwhile and effective to be a better human being. So that's it for now. This is part of my Shorty series where I expand on short thoughts and then engage you in this longer form. And I thank you for taking your time to come listen. Till next time, goodbye.